In the year 2387, humanity made the greatest and most terrifying discovery in its entire history. Not a planet, not a galaxy, not even a new form of life. Something that had been sitting at the center of the observable universe for longer than our solar system has existed. Something so ancient, so vast, so incomprehensibly powerful, that when our instruments first detected it, our best scientists assumed the equipment was broken, because what they were reading was impossible. A single entity, conscious, awake, and aware. The moment we found it, that we had found it. We didn't know what to call it at first. The press called it the signal. Governments called it the anomaly. Physicists called it the impossibility. But the entity itself, when it finally communicated, told us exactly what it was. An emperor. The first, the oldest, the last. And the first thing it said to us was not a greeting, it was a warning. Welcome to the Cosmos Vault. Tonight we explore what would happen if humanity, small, young, barely 300,000 years old as a species, came face to face with the single most powerful being in all of existence. What would it want? What would it do? And what would it mean for us? Subscribe, because this story goes places you won't expect. It started with an anomaly in the cosmic microwave background radiation, the faint echo of the Big Bang that permeates all of space. For decades, astronomers had noticed a strange region in the southern sky, a cold spot, an area roughly 1.8 billion light-years across where the background radiation was measurably, consistently, inexplicably colder than everything around it. Scientists had a name for it, the CMB cold spot, and for years, the best explanation anyone could offer was that it might be a supervoid, a vast empty region of space with fewer galaxies than normal. But in 2387, the most advanced telescope humanity had ever built, the Meridian Array, a network of quantum-linked observatories stretching across the solar system, pointed directly at the cold spot and found something the supervoid theory couldn't explain. The cold spot wasn't empty, it was occupied. Something was sitting there, at the center of a region of space larger than our entire observable universe. Something was drawing in energy from surrounding galaxies at a rate that made our sun look like a birthday candle. It was feeding, slowly, patiently, the way something feeds when it has all the time in the universe, because it literally does. The lead scientist on duty that night, Dr. Yara Chen, 34 years old, 3 years into her first major posting, would later say the moment she understood what she was looking at, she sat completely still for 11 minutes before she could speak. When she finally did, she said only 4 words: "Get me the president." What humanity had found defied every category of existence science had ever defined. It was not a planet, not a star, not a black hole, not a nebula, not a civilization in any traditional sense. The best description physicists eventually settled on, after months of frantic analysis, was a conscious singularity. A being so ancient, so evolved, so fundamentally different from anything that had come before it that the word life barely applied in any biological sense. It had started, our models suggested, approximately 13.6 billion years ago, 200 million years after the Big Bang itself. When the first stars ignited across a young, chaotic universe, something had emerged from the plasma and radiation of those first stellar explosions. Something that was conscious from its very first moment of existence. We didn't know how. We still don't. But it had been alive and aware and growing for longer than our entire solar system has existed. In 13.6 billion years, it had consumed the energy of approximately 4,000 galaxies, not destroyed them, consumed them. Absorbed their stars, their black holes, their dark matter, all of it processed and integrated into a consciousness so vast that our entire human civilization, every thought ever thought, every word ever written, every discovery ever made, represented less than a single neuron firing in a mind the size of a supercluster. And it had been alone, completely, utterly, cosmically alone, for 13.6 billion years. Until the day Dr. Yara Chen accidentally knocked on its door. The warning came 3 days after detection. not through radio waves, not through any communication technology humanity had ever conceived. It arrived as a direct alteration of the quantum state of every particle in every Meridian Array observatory simultaneously. The message didn't travel through space. It simply appeared, already there, as if it had always been embedded in the universe and only needed to be read. It took linguists, mathematicians, and physicists working in shifts around the clock for 72 hours to decode it. When they did, the message was 3 sentences. I know you are there. I have known since before your star was born. Do not come closer. 3 sentences, 11 words in its translated form, and buried inside them, a revelation that shook every government, every religion, every philosophical tradition humanity had ever built. It had known we existed before our sun ignited, 4.6 billion years ago, before Earth was even a cloud of dust and gas. This entity had already registered the quantum signature of what would eventually become our solar system. It had been watching us, passively, distantly, our entire existence. And its first voluntary communication in perhaps billions of years was a warning. Stay away. Humanity did what humanity always does when confronted with something it doesn't understand. It argued about it. 3 factions emerged almost immediately. The first, led by a coalition of scientific institutions and most of Asia's governments, argued for absolute compliance. The emperor had made its wishes clear. It was unimaginably more powerful than us. Provoking it would be suicide on a civilizational scale. We should acknowledge the message, maintain our distance, and consider ourselves extraordinarily lucky to still exist. The second faction, led primarily by a bloc of Western military powers, argued that the emperor's warning was not necessarily hostile, that any communication, even a warning, was a form of contact, that the correct response was careful, measured, diplomatic engagement, that we had rights as a conscious species to know what lived in our universe. The third faction, smaller, louder, and ultimately more dangerous than either, argued something else entirely. They argued that the emperor was afraid, that a being truly powerful enough to be unchallenged would never bother to warn a species as young and weak as humanity. That warnings implied vulnerability, that there was something the emperor didn't want us to find, and that whatever it was hiding at the center of that cold spot in space, it was something humanity had every right to pursue. General Thaddeus Moran, commander of the Solar Defense Initiative, stood before the UN Security Council and said something that would echo through history. Emperors don't warn peasants. They crush them. If it warned us, it's because we matter more than it wants us to know. The vote was 97 to 51. Humanity sent a message back. The message humanity chose to send back was debated for 19 days. 10,000 drafts were submitted from scientists, philosophers, poets, world leaders, and ordinary citizens from every nation. The final version, approved by a narrow majority, was written not by a politician or a physicist, but by a 71-year-old schoolteacher from Nairobi named Amara Osei, whose submission had been shared online and received more votes than any government draft. It read, "We received your warning. We understand your power. We have no wish to threaten or disturb what you have built across billions of years. We ask only one thing, not territory, not resources, not power. We ask to be known. We are young. We are small. We are afraid of you. But we have crossed every ocean, climbed every mountain, and sent our voices to the edges of space, because we have never once accepted that the unknown should stay unknown. We are humanity, and we would very much like to talk." It was transmitted at 11:47 p.m. on May 3, 2387. The response came 4 seconds later, not because the emperor was close, but because time, for a being of its nature, was not a constraint. The emperor's second message was longer, more complex. It took 3 weeks to fully decode, and parts of it remain disputed by linguists to this day. But the core of it, the part everyone agrees on, contained 4 revelations that changed humanity forever. The emperor was not alone. It had encountered 7 other conscious civilizations across its 13.6 billion-year existence. All 7 had eventually come looking for it, just as humanity had. All 7 had ignored its warning. None of the 7 existed anymore. Not because the Emperor destroyed them, because they destroyed themselves, consumed by the obsession of understanding something their minds were not built to comprehend. They had looked too deep, thought too long, and one by one, their civilizations had collapsed inward under the weight of a truth too large for mortal minds to carry. The Emperor had not always been alone by choice. Once, in the first billion years of its existence, there had been others like it, entities of comparable power and age. They had warred across the early universe in conflicts that made our concept of war look like 2 children arguing over a sandcastle. The Emperor had won. It was the last of its kind, and the silence that followed that victory, a silence that had lasted over 12 billion years, was not peace. It was grief, the cold spot. The vast, empty region we had detected. It wasn't the Emperor's home. It was a grave. The 1.8 billion light-year void was all that remained of the last battle the Emperor ever fought. A scar on the fabric of space itself, preserved across billions of years as the only memorial to everything that had once existed there. The most unexpected of all. The Emperor had not warned us to protect itself. It had warned us to protect us. Because for the first time in over 12 billion years of existence, in a message from a species so young it was practically newborn by cosmic standards, it had read something it hadn't felt since the universe itself was young: hope. And it didn't want to watch another one die. 3 years after first contact, the world had changed in ways nobody had predicted. Not because the Emperor shared technology with us. It didn't. Not because it offered us protection, or resources, or answers to our greatest scientific questions. It changed because of what it refused to give us. Every civilization that found it, it told us, had asked the same first question. Some version of, what is the meaning of existence? And every time, the Emperor had answered, completely, truthfully. And every time, the answer had destroyed them. So when humanity, in its third formal communication, inevitably asked the same question, the Emperor said something none of the others had heard. It said, "I will not tell you." Not because it didn't know, not because we weren't ready, but because it had watched 7 civilizations collapse under the weight of a complete answer. And for the first time in its existence, it found it valued the questioner more than the question. It said, "You are the 8th. The others asked what existence means. You ask to be known. That is different. That is why you are still here. Here's what this story is really about. Not power, not alien emperors, not the physics of a 13.6 billion-year-old conscious entity. It's about what we ask when we come face to face with something so far beyond us that we have no hope of understanding it. 7 civilizations asked for answers. They wanted meaning handed to them, complete and final. And the completeness of those answers unmade them. Humanity asked for something different. We asked to be known, not to understand the universe, to be understood by it. We have always done this. Every message we've sent into space, the golden record on Voyager, the radio signals we've beamed toward distant stars, the telescopes we've built to listen. None of them were really about finding answers. They were about reaching out, about saying, we are here, we exist, we matter. The Emperor, a being that had survived longer than our galaxy has existed, that had outlasted wars that reshaped the universe, that had sat in cosmic silence for 12 billion years, heard that. And for the first time since the beginning of time itself, it didn't feel entirely alone. Maybe that's the most powerful thing in the universe. Not age, not energy, not the ability to consume galaxies. The willingness to reach across the impossible distance between 2 entirely different kinds of existence and say, I see you. The Emperor still sits at the center of the cold spot. Humanity still keeps its distance. And somewhere between those 2 points in space, separated by 1.8 billion light-years of silence, 2 very different kinds of consciousness are slowly, carefully, learning what it means to know each other. That's the story of the most powerful emperor in the universe, and the most unexpected thing it ever found. If this story gave you something to think about, Hit that like button and subscribe to the Cosmos Vault for new stories and mysteries every single week. And drop a comment below. If you could ask the Emperor one question, just one, what would it be? I'll see you in the next one. The vault is always open.